Hey everyone, and welcome to winconductor.org, our Maestro moment. Super excited to have a returning guest today. I was just talking to her, and I did not realize that it's been almost a year since Alex Shapiro and I spoke, and it was kind of at the beginning, towards the beginning of this. I think we spoke in May, put together a video and talked about some of the things that were happening, and just all the confusion and stuff like that. So I'm super excited to bring her back today, kind of find out what she's been doing over the past year, some of the things that she's been involved in, some of the wins that she's had as a composer, as a collaborator. I know she's been working with some different education programs. We were just talking; she's just got done with an all-state, so we'll definitely look forward to learning about that stuff. And we'll get started with that real soon. As you guys know, winconductor.org, our Maestro moments are brought to us by Amano Music. So we got a quick word from them, and after that, we'll be right back with Alex Shapiro.
WinConductor.org's Maestro Moments is brought to you tonight through the support of Amano Music. Amano Music is a collective for composers and a resource to band directors. Find the very best in wind band repertoire, from classic marches updated and edited for contemporary wind ensembles to the latest from innovative independent composers like the piece you're listening to right now, Chatterbox by Jason McChristian. You will also find resources for the band classroom, including books on topics important to band directors, as well as methods like mastering the scales to prepare your band to tackle rigorous repertoire. You can find Amano Music by visiting their website at www.amanomusic.com. That's Amano Music with a double A.
All right, and without any further ado, let's go ahead and invite Alex on. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I am so happy to be a return guest, and you've had such a great list of guests so far on this show. So I'm delighted to be part of it.
Well, I'm honored and blessed that so many of you will give your time to kind of talk to our wind band community. Our site kind of caters towards it's all wind band stuff, but mostly high school directors follow us, and we love to get to know some of the composers, some of the great band conductors, some of the great educators that are out there. And I'm just honored that you and the other musicians that have joined us are willing to give their time. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So we were speaking briefly before we got on the air, and you just came off of a Zoom with an all-state.
Yep. The Arizona All-State. And we had 112 students on there. It was awesome.
Wow.
It was great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
they're doing a piece of mine called Tight Squeeze. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So you're doing that piece. So what was that like? Because I know here in North Carolina, which that's kind of a new development for me since the last time we spoke. I have taken a band position in North Carolina, but a lot of our district and all-state events. All-state is, I think, is still kind of up in the air whether they're going to try to put something together this year. But what was that like with Arizona? Are they still are they virtual or?
Yeah, it's virtual. So what we've been doing, this is probably the 6th all-state I've done in as many weeks or something. I mean, I've been doing a lot of them. Right. I've been making my way through the country, I think. It's like see the USA through the all-state program. It's fantastic. And in, I think, all but one instance, it's been virtual. So what we do basically when they have a guest is we talk about all kinds of things, and I can screen share, show examples or whatever. And best of all, it's interactive. I can take their questions, which I love doing because the questions are always great. Yeah. And so it becomes a conversation. And then what they're doing in this case in Arizona, all the students are going, they did kind of a virtual rehearsal and run through of the piece virtually. But then they're all going to record their parts at home. So we talked about that too. And I've even set up in these months when everybody's been doing this, I finally put together, I wrote up a little guide for students and for the engineers who have to deal with all these tracks, Yeah. It's insane. I wrote up a couple extra PDFs in addition to the one that I've always had about, just conducting to a track and what's involved in that for live performance. Now I've expanded my resources to help everybody out, including the students. They understand, okay, how to set this up so that, the track isn't heard and the click isn't heard on their recording, and how to route things, how to use things. So we try to be as helpful as we can.
No, that's
It's
awesome.
amazing to me how everybody this past year since we've spoken has just risen to the occasion. I mean, they've had to, and they've gotten a lot more tech savvy very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that since the time we came, because we spoke kind of towards the beginning of all this stuff, as it was kind of going on at the end of last school year, and had no clue. We didn't know what the fall was going to look like. Here we are, almost a year later, and we see a little bit more of a glimpse of the light at the end of the tunnel as we see more places opening up like that. But we still have a lot of questions about what that future is going to look like. And I definitely want to dig into that. But, Maestro Moments, one of the things that we've been doing is I love to, when I think back to all the great composers, the wind band composers, when we play a Sousa March, or if we pull out a work by Percy Grainger or something like that, as a band director, we can read, some of their biographies and stuff like that, and get a little glimpse of them. But through Maestro Moments, I'm hoping that we can kind of get to know the composers and the great band leaders, get to know their personalities a little bit as we play their music, and maybe help us as band directors just kind of share the story a little bit more with our kids. So, what was your start with music? What are some of your early musical memories?
I was one of those really lucky kids who grew up in a house, in an apartment in New York City, in my case, with parents who loved music. I mean, it was playing all the time in the house. Now, they only loved classical music. Their tastes were rather narrow, all things considered, but they loved classical music, and it was playing all the time. My mother was an amateur flutist, so she played a great deal in the house. The flute rep, it was years that I only heard, for years as a kid, I only heard, the solo line or excerpt from something. And like when I finally heard Telemann Suite in A with all the instruments, it was like, wow, that's what it sounds like. So it's really funny to grow up as a little kid, listening to just the one line of a part of a piece. My father loved to blast over the big floor speakers, Mahler symphonies and all this. When I was going to bed, I mean, Mahler would be blasting. And I think that probably had a very good effect on me, on my demented way of hearing. I don't know. It was just a great experience. And so I think, households where kids have music of any kind, I don't care what kind of music it is, I think that's a really great thing. I feel very lucky that I had that.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, did you? Was there an instrument that kind of you started on, or what?
Well, actually, I was pointing to my piano behind me, but actually, I started on recorder, right?
Okay.
Because back in the days, this is the late 1960s, I guess, when I was 9 years old, or maybe it was it was 71 or something like that. I was born in 62. So whatever the math is. And we had in fourth grade, I remember we had recorder class, which I'm sure a lot of schools don't have anymore. And I took to recorder really fast. I mean, God, a room full of fourth graders blasting away on recorders is not a great image or sound, I'm sure. And I did have a wood recorder, though, not a Hohner.
Oh, nice.
But it was actually also the beginning of my composing and arranging career, because
really,
and my very first rejection at the time. This was around 1971. One of the really big popular shows on PBS in New York City, at least, and I'm sure elsewhere, was Masterpiece Theater. Yeah. And they used this beautiful Baroque theme by Morey. I'm forgetting the name of the composer. I'm terrible. Take away my composing license right now. But at any rate, it was the one that went da da dum bum 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 ba da 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 da. Right? Everybody knows it. Great tune. Well, I was so taken by that tune when I was 9. I actually did a takedown. I did a 4-part recorder arrangement with harmony, counterpoint, the whole thing. I was no Mozart, but I managed to do this. I'm sure half the notes were written backwards or something, stemmed wrong. But I wrote down a 4-part arrangement. The next day, I brought it in. I don't know, it's like a page long or something. I brought it into my 4th grade teacher, who was shorter than I was. She was a delightful woman, Sylvia Kupferstein. I still remember her name. She was so sweet. I handed it to her, ever hopeful. I said, "Here, I brought something the class can play." And she looks at it, and she looks at me. She just shakes her head, and she says, "Oh, Alex." She probably called me Alexandra. "Oh, Alexandra, no, this is too hard. We can't play this. And she handed it back to me. It was my first rejection. I was a bit crestfallen, but I went home and I kept writing. I got right back on the horse. I didn't. She was very sweet. I knew she didn't mean it maliciously, but it was just rather offhanded. It's like, no, we can't play this here, kid. Here it is. It prepared me really well for the music business. Let me tell you, start getting rejected at age 9, folks. That's the deal. Get rejected early, and it doesn't hurt so much.
Yeah, yeah, right. So now, speaking of the music business, you actually had quite a career within. You were in LA for
24 years.
Yeah, and you were involved heavily within the all aspects of the music field there. Tell us a little bit about that journey, kind of what took you out there, and how some of those things progress and stuff.
Sure. And, it was such a different world when I got out there than it is now, because what got me out from Manhattan to LA in 1983, this is before the desktop computer, before the Mac, before the internet, obviously, right? So very different world. And I'd met somebody, I'd met some producer who needed music. He was at a party or something in New York, and he offered me a gig scoring something. And it seemed to be like a really good opportunity. It was scoring some direct-to-video piece of junk, trust me. But it was an opportunity for me at age 21 to, come out to the West Coast and start working in commercial music. At the time, I was studying part-time with John Cruliano, who had just come back like the year before from doing Altered States in '82, I think it was. And I remember poring over that score with him, and the light bulb went on for me that, wow, here's a way to write really sophisticated, incredible music and have a lot of people hear it, because music, even when it's very aleatoric and, different sounding, people perceive it very differently in a concert hall than they do with a film and with visuals.
Right.
I think that was the first realization of that difference, and I thought, aha, here's a way to bring both worlds together. I got very interested in doing commercial work, and had started to do a couple of low budget documentaries when I was at Manhattan School of Music, on my own, getting hired out for little scoring gigs, and so I got my feet wet doing that. Came out to LA, used this opportunity to leave Manhattan School of Music with John and Ursula Mamlock's blessings. They were my 2 comp teachers, and I think attitude was, hey, conservatory is trade school. You got a job, go. And so I never graduated. I just went to the West Coast and did this little film, and then decided, yeah, I like doing this a lot. And I, just found ways to keep doing it. I built up a studio, which even back then, one had to have. And once the Apple came out in '84, and then the next year, the DX7, the Yamaha DX7.
Right.
And I had set up a 4-track studio, and at the time it was real. I had a mixing console, but then it just kept growing and growing, and my racks of gear kept growing. And, as one has now, everything's digital, of course. But that was a good experience. But it was interesting. I think it's so much easier now to establish yourself in any part of the music business because of these online tools.
Sure.
When I think back to 35 years ago, it was pretty isolating. You really had to make the efforts. Even then, I certainly remember years later, it was by about 1989 or 90, that I found out about a wonderful organization called the Society of Composers and Lyricists, which I think is a must join for any film music artist. And I showed up at one of their meetings. I believe my friend Bruce Broughton was president at the time, and he that was kind of the start of my realization that the best way to get involved and really feel like you have some sense of community and connection in the vast expanse that is Los Angeles is to get involved with organizations, and therefore with like-minded people, and share information and expand your network that way. And to this day, and this was of course before we had the internet, so everything was in person, but to this day now, when people ask me, and they often do, how do you get started in the field? I always say, get involved, give up your time, get involved, show up. Now, show up online, that's fine too. But being involved with your peers and is such a great two-way street in so many ways, because you share information, you obviously get a great deal of information, and you build wonderful friendships. People that I know from LA and from those days. Many of them became my close friends, and to this day.
Yeah, there's a motivational speaker that has a phrase that he coined, and it's Zig Ziglar, who was a big motivational speaker. My dad was a sales guy, so that's what he had on in the car when I was when I was a kid. But one of his phrases that still sticks to me today, and I think I don't think it's just a business philosophy, but it's just a life philosophy. And he said, "You can have everything in your life that you want if you help other people get what they want." And it's part of that giving, and just put yourself out there, help other people, help them be successful, and in return, people remember that, and they'll ask you to do something for them, and it's just this whole collaboration thing. And I think once you start taking uh, the I out of it and start putting the we into it, those connections start really coming together and everything.
I
So
couldn't agree more. That's been the centerpiece, I think, of the way I have been tried to be in the music world, is just to be an advocate for everybody else. Because
yeah,
when any artist does well, we all do well, and it's great for the arts. And especially in this country, in the United States, we're at a disadvantage here because the arts are not held front and center the way they are in other cultures. And so anything
right.
that we can do to elevate our own profession, and that means elevating our peers, is a very, very important thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. So, one of the things that I think sets your music apart is that how well you integrate the technology side with live performance, because so many of your compositions include a pre-recorded aspect to it. And now, how much of that was influenced by your time in LA and working in some of those digital studios and stuff?
A lot of it. I mean, I think because I had those skills. Well, I started with electronic music when I was like 15.
Okay.
Not writing anything great, but fascinated with building modular synths and programming them, connecting them at the time, and then later programming with FM algorithmic synthesis and things like that with the DX7. Woohoo! I've always been a total geek. So that my interest has always been that, but without question, because I had a project studio and was working commercially for 15 years, that was a natural skill set that I, honed and developed and got better at as I got older. And then when I flipped my career over when I was in my late 30s, I decided I wanted to write concert music, didn't want to pursue film and TV anymore. Whoop. I just lost my video for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm still here. There we go. Technology, just as we're talking about tech. See, the gnomes enter and they say, not so fast, not so
Right.
fast. At any rate, it's so appropriate. It's breezy here. But I was, when I switched over to concert music and was writing a lot of chamber music, increasingly, because I had the studio, I had opportunities to write electroacoustic pieces for soloists and duets. I enjoyed doing that very much. Most of my chamber music catalog is purely acoustic, but there are a number of pieces that are electroacoustic. Then it just went naturally that when I unexpectedly entered the band world, I think my first commission was when I was like 46. I mean, I was a late bloomer in the band world, and the first piece was acoustic. It's called Homecoming, but every piece after that, the next piece was paper cut and immersion, two wildly different pieces, one for middle school and the other, for older players. And paper cut at the time was the first middle school piece that was electroacoustic. The reason is because when I started to explore the wind band world, which was not in my DNA at all, we didn't have a wind band when I was growing up. I had never been to wind band concerts. I didn't play a wind instrument. This was a totally new world for me, and I was fascinated by it. But I immediately became very familiar with the great living wind band composers, many of whom are good friends of mine now. And I didn't know any of them at the time, but what I did know when I started hearing them, like when I went to my first Midwest clinic in like 2008, I think, was, oh my gosh, I'll never sound like this. These guys are amazing. What am I going to do? This is crazy. And then I snapped out of it, of course, and I realized I don't have to sound like them.
Right.
They've got them covered. Thank you very much. They're doing fine being them. My job, and I say this to all composers, our job is to be the first and only us, right? And we all know this, but sometimes it's worth reiterating. And so when I thought about what makes me me and how do I hear, other than, maybe my different sense of harmony and all that, is, my fluency and happy place with all this gear and doing electroacoustic pieces. And I realized at the time, I did not know Stephen Bryant, the wonderful Stephen Bryant, your recent guest, who I adore. And I didn't know him. I didn't know Ecstatic Waters. I think he had written a few years before I wrote Paper Cut. I didn't know that piece at all, hadn't heard anything. So I was just jumping off a cliff. I had no idea whether it would sound cool or awful to put, a big group of people on stage with a track. And so I figured, okay, I'm just going to find out. Let's try this. And then it ended up working. Steve does it a little differently than I do, because as many of our listeners know, he uses Ableton. And so he'll often have a human being triggering track entrances, cue entrances from Ableton. What I do is a pre-recorded track, no triggering at all, other than hit start. So those are two of the many different ways to go about this. His is a little more interactive. I take the cowardly route. It's like, I don't want anything to go wrong. I'm just going to make you start at the beginning and adhere to my tempi.
Yeah.
Being the control freak that I clearly am. But I am a kind person when it comes to conductors, though. They will back me up on this. I say, if you want more time on something, just tell me. I'll change the click. I'll do the tempo map. I'll change it. I mean, I think that you have to be collaborative. But certainly when you're doing a straight through track, the conductor is more of a slave to the composer's intent. Composers are not always right, by the way, about their tempo. We all know this. We certainly know it when we watch composers conduct their own pieces. Some composers are not the best conductors of their pieces. And in electroacoustic work, I will be the first person to say, if someone has a better idea for a tempo, when the piece is new at least, and more in a position to make changes, let me know. So that's how you figure it out.
So kind of going along that, I wanted to take a look at one of your pieces, and it kind of touches on a couple of things that you said, because you said that starting out you were doing some chamber stuff and whatnot, and I wanted to take a look at Trains of Thought. Because that one, I think when I read through the program notes, that one started out as a sextet piece. Is that correct? Did I read that?
Yes. Yeah, an electroacoustic sextet for low instruments. Yeah.
So now, in reading that, it said you got the inspiration by watching one of your friends, fellow composer, who posted a video, and it was just a train going by. How I'm always curious about the inspiration that composers get for the works that they had, so I don't know how well you remember the process and all that other stuff, but what was behind that? What went from a train whooshing down the tracks to being this composition?
That's a great question. And I do remember the specifics of it, Aaron. And interestingly, because I had so much fun doing this. The composer who posted this is Dennis Bathory Kitts, who a number of other composers certainly would know from on Facebook. Like me, he hangs out on Facebook. He lives in Vermont in a rural area. And not far from him is the Amtrak line that just whizzes by. I don't think that there's a stop. He's in a small place. But one day on Facebook, he had just posted this rather evocative video of the train whooshing by. It was a video, so I think it was meant to be look at the whoosh of the train going by.
Right.
But the sound was amazing, and I was so taken by the particular chord, the cluster of notes that mournful train happened to have, because every train's a little different.
Right.
And then also in the background, as I recall, was the crossing bell, ding, 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 and it was sort of this syncopated polyrhythm thing. And I think it was a C. I think it was a C is the note of the crossing bell. Anyway, I watched this video a few times, and I messaged Dennis and I said, I'll pay you if you would grab your recording equipment and go down to the tracks and make some recordings for me of this when the train's going to come by. And he was happy to do it. He's just wonderful. And I did not have any idea what piece I was going to use these in. But I call myself the happy little sonic dung beetle, because I collect sounds. When I find sounds I like, I collect them, because you never know what's going to end up in one of my pieces. I use rocks, I use metal bowls, I use ping pong balls, you name it, whales, trains, I'll use it. Fairies, not fairies like, fairies, but fairies like the boat.
Yeah.
Although I would use fairies, a little fairy dust would be a good thing, especially these days, right? We need as much fairy dust as possible. But anyway, I collect sounds, and I was fairly taken by that. So he went down. He was so great. He got me beautiful recordings. I dumped them into my computer, cleaned them up a little bit, the starts, the ends, and filtered them, and tucked them away in a folder. My little dung beetle rolling her little sound into the folder and for later use. And a few years later, about 2 or 3 years later, I had the opportunity to write the sextet. It was a commission where they said you can write for any instruments you want. It just was a chamber music thing, it was lovely. And so I decided, you know what? I really like the underdog instruments, because trumpets and flutes, they got tons of
they always
rep,
get the
right?
melody.
They always get the melody. I'm gonna go deep and go dark, and so I chose the lowest instruments, to put them all together in a soup and just be dark and live in that kind of broody place. And then I happened to go through, I knew it was going to be an EA piece. And I happened to go through my little dung beetle folder, and I saw the train sounds. I pulled them up, and oh my gosh, it was like this perfect match, because, when you think of tuba, euphonium, trombone, and these low sounds of the train, it was working. And what I did, and the way the piece came to be, this is often how I deal with samples for anybody who's a composer who might be listening to this. The reason that perhaps my music does sound fairly organic and seamless in the connection between the electronic and the digital audio and the live instruments is because I often will start with an idea from the digital audio, which is often a sound like trains, something I've collected from real life. And I pull out the pitches and the rhythms that are inherent in the sound, even if it's rocks. I wrote a piece called Rock Music years ago for young students, and rocks have pitches. And when I got all these rock samples from all the students in this case, I put them into little collections of what pitches they were. Many of them happened to be in A flat. Who knew? Rocks, A flat.
Yeah.
But there you go. But I pulled out, I was listening to these train samples, and I notated, they were clusters, they weren't chords, but I notated the sounds and made note of them, and also some of the rhythms, etc. That was inherent. And I pulled all the pitches and my pitch choices for Train of Thought, the sextet version, and then later Trains of Thought, all came from the trains themselves. And I think that's why it has an evocative sound of, blending in and out of the live band, because everybody's in that same pitch world. I do this with a lot of my pieces. That's sort of my technique. And,
Awesome.
and it's great fun. It's great fun.
Let's take a listen to it, if you don't mind. This is coming off of YouTube, and this is
my dear friend Gerard Morris. He premiered this. This is the live premiere. I was actually present at this concert. This was in Tacoma. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and as we do this, maybe if you could just talk maybe a little bit, if I.
Sure.
I love the different sound that you're So what were some of the sounds that we heard in the intro there?
Yeah, you heard the crossing bell, ding, 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 ding. You heard the train sounds going from left to right and right
Hmm.
to left. And you
Hmm.
heard the band appearing, kind of out of the fog of the train, playing notes. And so the beginning is very, very evocative. And people can listen to this, by the way, it's streaming or downloadable on my website. And now it's building. More trains coming.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at the inspiration that comes. Something uh, like a train crossing.
Mhm.
Uh, just developing into something amazing. I mean, it's a beautiful piece. I love all
Thank you.
your works. I'm always
Thank you.
I like so many things, but this it's interesting to me as somebody who does some composing, does some arranging and stuff like that, just to hear what other people how they kind of uh, get their inspiration from different things. It's just a really cool experience.
And that piece for me is very cinematic. A favorite of mine too. It's very evocative. It's very moody, and
Mm,
it was very visual for me. Not a specific scene, but it had tension and it had like mystery to it. And there was a little story in my head when I was writing it, and I don't know why. It's almost like I was having a film in my own head, while I was writing it. It's just moody in that way.
yeah,
It's fun. It's fun to do that. It's sort of, having done film scoring, it's really fun to kind of reverse engineer, so to speak,
right,
and and be able to create the music for the movie that's going on in your own head,
yeah.
even if it's an abstract movie. Yeah.
So the visual element, I do have lights out, and I thought it'd be kind of cool for us to talk about that. So and I'm going to go ahead and start playing that, and this is the University of Memphis Symphonic Band with Armand Hall
Wonderful
performing.
Armand Hall. Yeah.
Yeah,
And let
and
me set it up before you hit play on it, though.
okay,
If you want. Okay, just so people know what they're looking at, because Lights Out, as the title implies, does plunge everybody into the darkness on the stage as well as in the audience. And but the audience doesn't realize that there's a little bit of a script beforehand that's not in this video, where the power appears to go out unintentionally. And that makes everybody nervous. Of course, there's the nervous muttering, etc. And then out of the blue come these very loud percussive hits, and about a third of the band, the woodwind players, are sitting in the audience, unbeknownst to the audience members in many cases, and they suddenly start popping up and lighting up. They light up their instruments with colored LEDs shoved up their instruments to make the instruments glow. You'll see that, and so you'll see it's a little disorienting, of course, because everything's dark here. But you'll be basically what you're going to watch is the beginning. Is they're all making their way to the stage, and then by the big downbeat, it's planned, it's choreographed that everybody is there on the stage for the entrance of the main theme. So there you go.
awesome. So this is Lights Out by Alex Shapiro, performed by University of Memphis Symphonic Band. I love how the students are from a visual element are helping to set the mood and really getting into it.
They were great. Notice they're all standing.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Now, just curious from a performance perspective, how much of this is kind of directed through the score, the visual elements of stuff, and how much does the conductor or the band director have in developing this?
Great question. The score includes a lot of this material as optional suggestions. There are separate lines in the score for visual elements, physical elements, lighting elements. I included those in the score layout. And then I put my own suggestions, some of which they're doing, and then others, every band is going to do it differently.
Right.
And that's my hope and my intention is that
Sure.
I very much ask for them to bring their own, their own footprint to it. So it's collaborative even after the fact.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I wrote the piece. It was commissioned by about 19 different colleges and high schools. It's a grade 4, so it was geared more toward high schools. And what I did was I Skyped. At the time, Skype was the thing. This was in 2015. I Skyped myself in with virtually all of them for a rehearsal before I had ever written a note of the piece. And all I knew is that it was going to be lights out. It was going to be in the dark. We're going to use a lot of effects. And so I asked all the students, which was 1,000 students, whatever I was dealing with at the time was a lot, all these different bands. I said, if you were going to give an audience a different experience that they're not expecting at a concert hall, what would you do? And the ideas were just flying, and they're all on my website. And I actually print them in the score is the list of everybody's ideas, whether they were used or not, and an invitation for band directors to contact me and add to the list when they come up with cool things too, and I'll include them on the website. Right. Collaboration. It's so much fun because no two performances are ever the same. And I mean, the students were coming up with wild things, flame throwing animals and, God knows, silly putty or silly string and all these things. But so some of them, certainly flame, not an option, some of them we had to say no, but then other ideas were really, really good. I had my own ideas too about in the opening. My favorite part, I think, is in the first few seconds of the piece where I instruct there's a grand casa that does a roll at the same time that I have a very subsonic rumble in the track as things are getting going. And I instruct the students who are sitting in the audience getting ready to pop up and play that they should start gently for 2 seconds, kick the seat backs of the people sitting in front of them for 2 seconds so that by the time it stops, it stopped. They have no idea where it was coming, thus giving one of those kind of Disneyland ride three-dimensional experiences to the audience because they're already getting hit in the sternum with these sounds, right? Yeah. And then suddenly their chair is shaking. So I get paid to mess with people. That is my job description. It's so much fun. That's my favorite part.
Awesome. That's cool. Now, you mentioned collaboration being one of the things that you love. And last time we spoke, like I said, about a year ago, you were collaborating, I think, with Tim Salzman at University of Washington on a project that they were doing. And now, with that, you were having, some really tremendous success with the band members in the program. We were talking about some of the cool ideas that they were coming up with. Now, what has kind of developed with along those lines in the past year and everything?
It's been a big thing. It's really interesting to have the look back a year later
Mm,
because, and people can go onto your site and see our conversation. We spoke for about 20 minutes of our conversation was about this project, which is called Putting the E in Ensemble. And in short, Tim had contacted me out of the blue in March, right when everything, got shut down and we all went virtual. And he said, I've got, band and orchestra students, a lot of them, and I've got to go through the whole semester. I don't even know what to do. I want to keep them connected to each other. I want to keep them playing their instruments. And somehow, he said, I think composing is in there somewhere. And I
mm,
totally agreed. But neither of us had an idea of like how this would work. But, we hung up the phone after about a 40-minute conversation. Tim is just a great guy and very open-minded. And I started thinking about it because I have spent for the past decade, long before the pandemic, I've been online and interacting and doing things with students all over the world. And so I'm comfortable with the medium. I know what it does well. I know what it doesn't do well. And we all know what it doesn't do well. There is no synchronous audio yet. There will be. This pandemic was too soon. The next pandemic, if we have one, we'll have synchronous audio. And that will make it, and we'll have AI and we'll have virtual and augmented realities and other ways of connecting with people that will be far more rewarding than what we've been suffering through this year. But nonetheless, you deal with what you've got, and this is what we have, and it's not good enough, but we deal with it. So we know what you can't do, but what you can do is a lot of online collaboration, especially in with people writing their own material, recording it at home, uploading it with their peers, and then all the peers get to manipulate the material either through an online program like SoundTrap or BandLab, or just using Audacity or any of the free DAWs, digital audio workstations, that they have access to, and then sharing their files. And what we did was we broke all these students, because there were a lot of them, down into small teams, sound teams of 5 or 6 each, and let them all collaborate with each other. So they're all using each other's original motifs that they've recorded on their instruments. That's and awesome. Putting them into a DAW, multi-tracking them, and creating these compositions. This ended up working so unexpectedly well. I really had no idea if this would work or not when I wrote up the syllabus and the lesson plans and everything. It worked so well. And Tim and his team of people were fantastic, guiding the students through this. I've probably run this program with about 30 different schools at this point the past year. It's been wild. I come in and I consult. I don't teach it per se, but I Zoom myself in once or twice and work with students, setting them up in the beginning and then listening and using their own compositions as the object lesson for composition lessons about, here, let's look at what they've put together and talk about motivic development and form and, the balances and production for that matter, because they're really one and the same these days. You can't separate a piece of, notes from the way those notes are produced in a recording project. So it's just been a blast. And Tim's students took it totally next level, because what they did, and this is on my website, if you go to the E-Ensemble page, I should make sure that there's a good link to it. I think there is on my homepage. What Tim's students did was at the end of this semester, they made it a live performance. They took the pieces that they had written for just online, and then made it did videos of live performance in collaboration with choreographers and theater people, and they put up these 6 videos that will blow your mind. All original music from these students, none of whom were composing majors. They were just instrumentalists in the ensembles. So getting all these people to be able to feel comfortable expressing themselves and writing music, because I have always held that any musician is capable of composing. I think that sometimes people are given these messages that of putting them in a box of, you are a clarinet player, you are a composer, you are a conductor. Life is not like that. If you're a musician, you're a musician. You can do anything. Right. And if you play music, you can certainly come up with good motives, starting with those for your instrument, which is when you're talking with young students who are even composing students like high schoolers, the first thing most of us say is start by writing for your own instrument, because you know it really well. You know its idiomatic nature. all of this. So this is what this ended up doing. It gets them all writing for their own instruments, recording their own parts, and then collaborating with each other. So it blew my mind. I know it blew Tim's mind. He was amazing to collaborate with and work with and to see this through. And I've worked with so many incredible band directors and educators who have brought this to light with their own students. And it's been a total joy. Mind-blowing. Yeah. So that's
awesome.
what the tech can do well. It can keep us connected, keep us playing and connected to each other. Because, band is social, right? School is social. Yes. And to be wrenched away from each other all of a sudden was a drag. That was really hard. And it was very, very hard on the heart, as just a band student. So anything that will get them more connected with each other and keep them in touch with each other is a good thing.
You said this was on alexshapiro.com? Or
.org.
.org.
I think there's a link to it right there on my homepage. Scroll down. If you scroll down a little bit, this is fun to do live. To see my website here. Keep scrolling.
Web rehearsals.
And no, keep going. I mean, just scroll. Yeah, keep scrolling. You'll see a video of an image that I put up. Hold on. It's about a little bit more. Keep going. Keep going. It's down there. It's a U of Washington image. I'll stop you when I see it. It's coming up soon. And keep going. There we are. See that? The big W? Ta-da.
Yeah.
And if you click on that, I think somewhere in there it takes you to the E-Ensemble page, I hope, if I programmed it right. I'm the guilty person responsible for all these damn pixels.
Awesome. And I think I need to switch. Sometimes technology makes it easy and sometimes it doesn't.
Tell me about it. Our goal, whether we're doing a Zoom webinar or a EA piece, the tech should be visible, right? We want to keep the tech invisible, but sometimes it's not. So here's an article. That's Tim, and here's an article about the project from last May, about the time that you and I spoke, Aaron.
Yeah.
About it. And then if you go back to my website, you'll see a link to all the videos. People can read about this. And then if you, on the left-hand side, go up, other direction, back to the W. Remote control, go up if you can. There we go. On the left, I think, does it say putting the E in ensemble? Is there a link to the actual program? If there isn't,
oh, there it is. Yes.
We'll add one.
Oh, no, that took us to the...
I have to update the link. Okay. At any rate, folks can do this at home. I don't want to, waste your time with it. But you can see online. It's miraculous what they have done. It's just fantastic.
No, and one of the things that I love about it is that, what did I do here? I need to take this out. Sorry about that. But I love that it gets the students creating and just doing something, taking the, I think we talked about this last time, is the fear of failure kind of dictates so much of what we think we can do, and we kind of limit ourselves. And I love this project because it's not, I mean, you said you're not asking them to compose 2 or 3 minutes of music. You're just asking them for a short little thing. Yeah. And, that's something that, your top students are going to go crazy with, and they'll do, 10, 15-second ideas and kind of keep their ideas rolling. But, your students that are struggling with that concept, 15 seconds isn't as intimidating and stuff. So I just love that it's designed to involve everybody, but even just to grow with the interest level that the students have and everything. So, well, Alex, we're coming up to about an hour now, and I really appreciate your time, and I don't want to, go over time with you. But before we head out, we showed the website there, alexshapiro.org, and it is .org. Make sure we type that in. What are some other ways that people can find you?
Facebook is a great place for the band community. Tends to like Facebook, right? We are all there, and so there I am on Facebook in my kayak. That's in front of my house. That's where I am right now.
That's beautiful.
And that's literally my front yard. And I was launching myself and bundled up with my scarf and my braid, taking a walk someplace. But yeah, Facebook is a great place to share all kinds of stuff. And what I do on Facebook, because I really think that I have a very holistic approach to life, to music, to everything. And music is not separate from the rest of our lives. It's a fluid part of everything that we do. And in my case, what I do, as you can see from that cover photo, is that is literally what I'm looking at on the other side of this lens. And it is such a beautiful experience to live in remote nature like this, that I do post from time to time videos and photos of nature, of wild animals doing their thing. There's one right underneath, I think, my announcement of this chat. There we are, right underneath. There's a beautiful drone video. There we go. That is beautiful. Again, from my front door of the whole archipelago. Just incredible. So I like to share this with people, because it's, this is a difficult world, and sharing beauty is a good thing. We need to share more beauty. Not all my pieces are beautiful or easy to listen to. I'm just finishing up a 4-movement symphony that will premiere for the National Intercollegiate Band Conference in July in Grand Rapids. The first 2 movements are very dark and difficult and challenging, but in a good, cathartic way. So not all music, even when you live in a beautiful place, there is much darkness that has to be expressed and needs to be expressed. But then we can also come into the light. And that's also what makes a good piece. Like, for instance, the symphony does raise up. The last 2 movements are considerably lighter than the opening. Like life, So I think music and life and nature parallel each other quite naturally.
Yeah. Most definitely. Most definitely. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody at home, if you want to find Alex's music, I encourage you to check out our website, alexshapiro.org. You can find those resources there. You can learn more about that. Put the E in
Ensemble,
ensemble, EN ensemble program, where you get your kids composing. So definitely check that out. Reach out to her. She's got some great work. She's also developed some reduced score, flexible type pieces as well that are available there. Some of them are you'll get on there, you'll fall in love with them. So definitely check those out, and start incorporating those today. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron. This is great. It's great to talk to you.
Awesome. And we'll see you next time.